Hi everyone, my name is Tabitha and I am going to talk about a midwife that I got a chance to talk to. Her name is Sarah Owens and she is a certified nurse midwife. She was based out of Texas for about a decade, and then about a year ago she moved with her family to Oregon, and so she just a year ago, but she opened her home birthing practice up in Oregon and gets to kind of bring something different over there. She originally went into nursing school right out of high school. She was very drawn to helping people, wanting to be very mothering, nurturing, and knew that helping people was in her future. So she enrolled into nursing school, and the obstetrics and maternal medicine mentor that they had there was actually a certified nurse midwife as well. And so she got to learn a lot about higher C-section rates in the hospitals and really what midwifery care was all about. And so when she became pregnant with her first child, she said it was a no-brainer. Just, I'm gonna have a midwife. I might be a nurse, but I am not having a baby in a hospital. And so she had that baby in a birthing center with a midwife. And the way she describes it is they just made her feel like Superwoman. And that feeling of power, of nourishment, that is what she wanted to bring to other women that were having babies. And just having a baby herself, she stayed in nursing, but she switched from orthopedics and sports medicine over into labor and delivery. And so she was a labor and delivery nurse that really worked with the nurse midwives at her hospital for a couple of years while she had a couple more babies and let them all get just a little bit bigger. And then she went back to get her midwifery certification. And she's been working home births ever since. She had a stint here in Texas with a birthing center, but she primarily did the home births. What she enjoys the most about her job is what she calls professional hand-holding. And it's that moment where she's literally holding hands and coaching them through breathing and coping techniques. But in that process, there is a moment of what she calls a transformation, that you can see a woman go from being pregnant to being a mom. And that moment is what is the most satisfying. It's the moment she had of feeling like Superwoman, this great transformation, and she brings it to everyone else, which is just the best way to explain it, I think. In her community, specifically up there in Oregon, so this is where I think the difference of perspective is really cool. So like I said, when she worked here, she worked at, it's called Nativity Birth Center, which I'll talk a little bit more about later because it's local. But now transitioning up into Oregon, out of hospital births are not really a thing where she's at. She knows of two other full certified midwives, and one of them's about 2 hours north, the other's 2.5 hours, like southwest or something. And so she knows them. They talk to each other because you have to have your community, but they're not local. And then her local hospital has two main OBGYNs that are known for having very, very low vaginal birth rates, high C-sections in cases that aren't necessarily, in her mind, necessary. And as a nurse midwife, she knows a thing or two. So for her, the main need of her community is more education so that we can get more out-of-hospital birth options. Most people in her area assume birth is dangerous and scary because the rates in her area are scary, but a lot of that has less to do with the people and more to do with the setting. So for her, the issues that she feels are recurring are that people are having birthing trauma. It is a trauma. It's when you have those high C-section rates, you have those high levels of complications, a lot of which probably are preventable. It definitely is the medical system completely failing women. Along with that, you have insurance options. Even those that know the hospital isn't where they want to be, they can't afford to not use insurance to have their baby. And it does create, once people can't pay for it, You have a lot of people choosing not to be midwives because they don't have a good work-life balance because they're not getting paid by insurance and they're getting paid here and there, so they have to take all the strange cases. So it's just a system that's kind of flailing. For her and what's being done about those issues in her community, she and her other midwives are really focusing on advocacy so that we can get insurance to cover midwifery practices so that people know that they have other options. Once you start being able to afford it, then we can start talking about it, educating women. More people are willing to do the job because they're like, oh, this is gonna bring in, you know, a consistent income. Because while we all know we have a calling to it, it is still a livelihood. We have to be able to afford to do it and still take care of ourselves and nourish ourselves, right? So that's something that's really important to her, that advocacy. Let's start talking about it. Let's make it more possible in all of the ways, having more providers, having it covered by insurance so people aren't as worried about it. And then at the end of the day, all of those things make it more known so that women know they have options. That's not just, I go to the hospital. And that at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? Encouraging people, empowering them to make their own decision and to know all of their options, not just what one person says, this is what I want to do. For her, the requirements in Oregon are pretty much as long as there's no major signs of complications and the mom is at least 36 weeks, they're able to do a home birth, and it doesn't need to be in the hospital. So legally, she has a lot of flexibility since she just works for herself. She doesn't have to follow any birthing center standards or anything like that. So she's able to work with parents and just make sure that any expectant mothers don't have any major complications or reasons to think that it's going to be a complicated delivery. And then, of course, as the pregnancy progresses, if any of those signs do pop up, then they get transferred over to hospital care. And then as far as guest restrictions, she doesn't restrict them whatsoever unless the parents want them to. Because at the end of the day, right, it does take a village and we want specifically the mother, but the parents, the family to be nourished both physically and spiritually. So if you have people around that are going to help bring towels, hold her hand while she's screaming in agony, you have people that are going to be around to help support them, love them, make them feel all of the things that you want people feeling when there is a new baby coming in. We want to have them around. But as we were kind of talking about restrictions and requirements, one thing she did mention to me, she's practicing in Oregon, but she's very familiar with some of the surrounding states. As you tend to do, you have people traveling all over doing different stuff. That in Idaho, the state right next door, if a woman has a BMI over 30, she is not allowed to have an out-of-hospital delivery, and that's a state law, which she just felt was so insane as something to do because the risks are not enough higher, and in a lot of ways having the more one-on-one monitoring of a midwife as opposed to being in a hospital setting is actually a lot better for a woman with a higher BMI. So I thought that was a little odd. And then, so with that, it made me want to check in with my own local birth center. And so it's that one, well, there are 4 near me, but the one that I talked to and I researched was the same one that Sarah came from. It's called Nativity Birth Center, and they are a birth center of all certified nurse midwives. And so what's really cool about them is it is a birth center and it's all midwives, but because everyone there has those kind of advanced medical trainings, it does allow them to operate just a little differently even than your typical birth center, which is really cool. Again, we're talking about advocacy and making everything more accessible. That's kind of one of their goals. And so they allow, it's a case-by-case basis still, but there are some cases that are considered quote-unquote higher risk, but not high risk, but higher than average, that they will still take depending on other circumstances. Like I said, it's a case-by-case basis, but they will take vaginal birth after C-sections as long as it's only one C-section and it's not a vertical incision. They'll take women that have their first pregnancy over the age of 30, and they'll take women that have medical diseases that don't necessarily affect pregnancy, but a lot of people are like, oh, nope, you have medical abnormalities, head on over to the hospital. And there's some others that they're all listed on the screen. Some of the things that they won't do, though, are those if they've had multiple C-sections or that vertical incision. If they're having twins or multiples, they don't do those. Or if they are diabetic that's not controlled by diet, if they have to be on medication or insulin to manage it, they won't take those cases. But it's still really cool to know that there are a lot of other ones that they will take to try to help everyone, right? We want to make sure everyone's safe. We want to make sure they have the right tools, but this birthing center that's near me, it's definitely very positive to think about the fact that they're trying to, not only that they're willing to, but they are so like open, like, please, like come talk to us. We will see if we can help you to try to extend those opportunities to people that might not realize that they qualify. And then I am fortunate enough to be in an area that we do actually have several hospitals that have nurse midwives on their staff. So if for some reason they can't be seen at Nativity Birth Center, they are referred over to those other midwives that are in the hospital setting that can be overseen by an OBGYN, so that if it does become medically necessary, they're already in the hospital, but they still get that midwife level support, which is what we want, right? So those are some of the things that I learned talking to Sarah, and kind of reassures a lot of the things that we already know, like the needs of the communities, and this is across multiple states, right? Are advocacy, education, more access, more knowledge being shared. And I think we're all on the right path, because holistic wellness is something that's becoming much more common. And with people like us that are picking up the torch to be able to pass it along and continue to spread that advocacy, that encouragement, we're just going to continue to see this profession, this opportunity thrive for so many more people. So, thank you all.